Welcome back, passengers. This is your pilot speaking. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today by my two co-pilots,
Cara Hayes,
Robert Bradford.
And today we are wrapping up season 1 of Lost with episodes 23 through 25, Exodus parts 1, 2, and 3. Guys, how do we feel about being at the end of the first season already?
What a ride it has been.
went so fast.
It really did, and I think that was, probably helped by doing 3 or 4 at a time.
Sure.
Man, what a great season. The very first note that I took, this is everyone's very long, very bad, no good day. We've had over 25 episodes, or in the 22 prior to this, have taken place over the course of 43 days. These last 3 episodes all take place on the same day. Day number 44.
And I was thinking, we've had episodes that took place within a single day before, like All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues. Just one excuse to say that title one more time.
Daddy Cowboys.
But I think, this is the first time we've had multiple episodes only covered, all covered within a single day.
Mm-hmm. And I think over a 12-hour period, it really seems like from first thing in the morning to that night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it starts with Walt waking up, and then we get to I'd say maybe middle of the night when they blow the hatch.
Yep. I'm also pretty sure we said that there were a lot of extras at the end of the episode where Claire gives birth, because we see all of them gathering around and saying hello to the baby. But I think this is the most the extras have gotten to do up to this point, and it's the most we've seen repeated extras, like the same ones appearing more than once. As everyone puts in the final effort to get the raft ready to go.
It's about time the slackers do something.
Yeah. What's his name? Arst has fun with that later when he's like, we all are doing things too.
Yeah.
I teach high school. You don't think I know a click when I see one? Which a little bit of a thumb of the nose, I think, from the writers to some of the critics of the first season, but one of the more fun cases of that in media.
Yeah. The next thing I wrote down is smug John Locke. That's all I wrote. That's the only note, because this is the most smug he's gotten to be all season. Not as smug as we'll see him for the rest of the show. But Terry O'Quinn is eating up every moment where it's like, fuck, I guess we have to listen to Locke now.
And he's loving it. And I would too. Fuck you people for not wanting to listen to me.
It's definitely him at his most zealous of just the preacher who knows that, people have to come to him because he knows where the food is. So he can just lecture about destiny and sacrifices and what the island really wants, because, what else are they going to do? Find their way back in the dark without him?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Doesn't really pay off for him in the long run. But you know what? For right now, John, you do you. You take that W.
Kind of his story in miniature is starting off convinced that he knows exactly what's going on, being violently disproven about that, and then quickly reincorporating what's happened to him into the framework and moving ahead with the same certainty as before. Like we see him, confident when he tells Hurley, we don't have to worry, it's going in the other direction, we're fine. When the monster starts tearing stuff up around them, then the monster nearly kills him and drags him away, and he's like, no, this is fine, it's a test for me, I'm good.
The face acting from Terry O'Quinn, just the expressions, I think it's the next episode when this happens, when he's down on the ground. But the change from smug John Locke to scared shitless John Locke is really satisfying.
There's a moment of like, what are you doing? What's going on here? What's this? Oh, no.
Oh, I guess we're not BFFs after all, Smoke Monster. We're jumping around a lot because this episode, I think it's going to be like the end of season 6 before we see an episode with this many different characters getting flashbacks. But we see what were the last few hours like for everyone leading up to getting onto the plane, which is where Michelle Rodriguez just shows up on the scene. To the point where when Katie and I were watching this, Katie's here with us by words. Katie's here with us today behind me right now. But when we watched it together yesterday, she turned to me and she was like, I know I missed a few episodes, but when did Michelle Rodriguez get here? And I was like, you didn't miss anything. This is just, she just shows up.
Surprise.
I know that they had already come up with something for her for season 2, and this is a nice way of introducing her ahead of time, not giving her the arse treatment, who just shows up and starts lecturing everybody.
They're putting down a lot of markers for where they're planning to go in season 2 in these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. So at this point in her career, I think the first Fast and the Furious movie had come out, and I know she'd done some other, I think she'd been in SWAT with Colin Farrell.
There was SWAT, and then there was Resident Evil,
Okay.
the first one. It really is a very bold casting choice, because we've spent a lot of time here talking about how Dominic Monaghan was really the big name of the show when it aired. Terry O'Quinn had done a bunch of stuff in the 80s and 90s, but really wasn't a household name. No one really knew who Evangeline Lilly or Matthew Fox were at the time.
I think Matthew Fox had Party of Five through the
Party
of
90s,
Five,
which
yeah.
was a reasonable success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now we get like a movie star showing up on screen. And it wasn't like, here's Dominic Monaghan, here's Mary, or Pippin, whichever one he was. I think he was Mary, right?
He was Mary.
Yeah. Here, Michelle Rodriguez shows up and it's like, oh, look, it's Letty. Or, oh, look, it's Rain. Like, I don't know. It's it doesn't really work out for her long term. Don't drink and drive, friends. But yeah, a very interesting choice, and kind of forgotten that this is where she shows up.
Well, they establish specifically that she's on the same flight and that she's going to be in the tail section. So, along with the radio communication that Boone heard before the plane fell on him, this is now like the second breadcrumb they're leading us in the direction of other survivors elsewhere on the island. Mm-hmm. Also, really a good intro for her. Right? She has good chemistry with Matthew Fox. They flirt off each other really well in a way that sadly emphasizes that Matthew Fox just does not have that same chemistry with Evangeline Lilly. But yeah, it's like it's a good way to set you up to want to know a little bit more about this person and be excited to see her again in season 2.
Yeah, you're right, and she really is the flirtiest character we have met so far. You really get the sense from this scene that Ana Lucia is ready to jump Jack's bones right there at the hotel bar, or at the airport bar.
Mm-hmm. Mile High Club.
Hey, yeah, maybe that's what she was trying to set up before that mysterious phone call. We get some mentions of the numbers here again. There's going to be a lot of that, to the point where once we go over like where it really hits its all-time high with Hurley in the next couple of episodes, I really don't think it's worth keeping track of these at this point.
It's so dense on the ground as an Easter egg that I think we could fill up entire episodes just like picking those out.
Yeah, we'll do it through the end of this season, but I think we're going to kind of drop it after that. But Jack's seat number is 23B, and Ana Lucia is in 42F.
Poor Jack's in a middle seat.
Yeah.
Gross.
Poor guy. We find out what happened to Sawyer when we saw him in the background of Boone's episode. While he was at the police station, he headbutted an Australian official who was apparently a real person.
They actually pulled a real person's name.
Yeah, Warren Truss was actually a real politician in Australia at the time.
Oh, wow.
And among Sawyer's many, many crimes that this Australian police officer lists off is telemarketing fraud. So among everything else, Sawyer was a telemarketer, which in my opinion is the worst type of con artist.
It seems like a redundant crime because it implies the existence of legitimate telemarketing, and I don't really accept that.
Yeah, but what a perfect job for someone like him.
They have established he's got a naturally soothing voice, as we've seen with Little Turnip Head.
Yeah.
Who will get a name very soon in the next couple of episodes. This note that I wrote is kind of misleading, but I wrote down 50 Shades of Sawyer just because we really run the gamut of Sawyer's personality over these 3 episodes, and you really find out why he became as popular as he did, because this is like his first truly, fully unselfish, selfless episode. And the scene where he talks to Jack about meeting Christian in a bar is one of the best in the entire show, in my opinion. His performance, his monologue, and Matthew Fox's reaction to it are just brilliant.
It buys him nothing is the thing. There's no upside to it for him. Like, even previously nice things he's done, you could say, well, he needs to stay on good terms with the other survivors. It's, doing a favor here and there, by some goodwill. And here it's like, for all he knows, he's going on the raft and he's going to die and he'll never see any of them again. But he can choose to share this comfort with Jack, and tell him something about his own dad that, Sawyer will never get to know from his. And just, the two sons of crappy dads helping each other out just a little bit.
Yeah, they also get to lather him up in baby oil and give him a shirtless scene, chopping down some bamboo.
That didn't hurt.
Offsetting the fan service for Evangeline Lilly that we've talked about.
Yeah. Equal opportunity. I'm here for it.
It was interesting for me watching this at the time that when he's in the police station in Australia, we hear his real name for the first time. We'd heard him give his a different name when he introduces himself to Frank Duckett in his flashback. He just calls himself James, but for all we know, that's just an alias. But then the police officer confirms that, yes, his real name is James Ford, which for a show that had more than a few characters who came out of that, with aliases, that was always a fun thing for fans to put together to be like, okay, so that's that's who Sawyer really is.
Mm-hmm. Later in the episode, we get Kate's, what happened to Kate immediately prior to getting on board the plane. And I wrote down here in the notes, thank you, Marshall, but we all already watched all 3 of Kate's flashback episodes. His monologue is just like 3 minutes of explaining what her flashbacks were about.
That is not the writing from a team that is confident they've created a compelling and coherent emotional through line.
Either that or, they owed that actor something and they're like, fine, we'll give you this many lines. And, maybe I don't know.
I will say, I do love Frederick Lane, who plays the Marshal. He is an all-time great sleazebag character actor. He's played literal demons on Supernatural. He was Hugh Jackman's awful father-in-law in The Greatest Showman. He's popped up in a bunch of places. Wow. So I don't mind seeing more of him. But yeah, that whole scene does just sort of feel like them being like, look, you guys don't understand this. This is why Kate broke in. This is what the plane meant. It mattered, okay?
It's either that or they got this, the writers got this far and realized that they said way back in like episode whatever the case may be, they were like, all right, well, we have to get them some guns. We're going to put them in this Halliburton suitcase. If you guys don't remember Halliburton. Their cases are indestructible. We have to have a reason that he had a suitcase filled with 4 guns. We'll just explain it later.
Now, David, I'm not a firearms owner the way you are. If you're facing a threat, do 5 guns really help you out more than, say, 2 would?
If this were the Wild West, I would say yes.
Like, I'm thinking of Musketeer, where you fire a single shot pistol, drop it, draw another, something like that. But 2 guns, say a 12 round clip. If you can't kill someone coming at you with 24 shots and presumably the ability to reload, why does an entire 3rd, 4th, and 5th gun help you?
It's more than that. Like, most of those guns he's carrying with him hold a max of 15 rounds. So he is presumably, I'm not great at math, but let's say 75 bullets, considering he is carrying a pistol on him also. I wasn't going to bring this up, but also what the kinds of guns that were in that case have been horribly inconsistent all season. It's like the armor is just before every take, throw in 4 different guns. It really bothered me over these episodes, especially when they're going to hunt Ethan. Everyone gets a gun. Those guns that they were given in that episode, not the same guns that are in the case this time. Really bothered me. Anyway, sorry. No, a person did not need to bring 5 guns for 5'4" Evangeline Lilly.
Especially because at the end of the scene, he goads her into attacking him by taunting her about Tom Brennan's death. And when she attacks him, he doesn't need 5 guns to deal with her. He just elbows her in the face.
And that seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, which I'm not a big supporter of elbowing people in general in the face, particularly not handcuffed women. But it seems that does not in fact prove his point that he needs 5 guns to handle this person.
Oh Oh, man.
I know it seems nitpick. I'm mainly laughing just because so much else about this episode is so good on those details that pay off things that we've seen earlier in the season or that explain like some weird little thing. Like something I hadn't noticed until now, but I was doing some reading earlier, and way back in the second part of the pilot when Sawyer and Saeed are having their fight on the beach, and because they found handcuffs and they figured out somebody on the plane was a prisoner, Sawyer targets Saeed, and primarily just because he's a racist, but also says, I saw this guy get pulled out of line before we boarded. And this episode explains that because Shannon, just kind of to be a jerk, pointed him out to airport security. So that's why he was being pulled aside and interrogated. Like, I'd even forgotten that was a thing to pay off, but they still got there.
And that's why I don't understand why we needed to have this whole little thing with the marshal. Like, nobody's questioning why there's guns in a case. Like, we know there's an air marshal. We know she was a prisoner. I'm going to assume that's why there's guns.
The marshal thing is its own explanation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this man presumably isn't just... His whole job isn't to capture Kate Austin. He's going to take her home and then immediately move on to the next fugitive that he needs to go and catch. And maybe the next guy will require him to have 5 guns. I don't know. But it's especially jarring. Like, we just talked about Sawyer's monologue and how well written and well performed it is. Minutes later, literal minutes later, we get this really horrible exposition for things that we have seen happen from the marshal.
It's also painful because it feels the most mechanical, where all these other pieces lay together an emotional connection and a narrative connection between where these people were just before they got on the plane versus the people they become on the island. So, I mean, if we had a scene that was just like Kate and the marshal just, in the hotel room or something, and her making some desperate play to try to escape, just reminding us of like how much of her life was just trying to get away, trying to get out, that could have been interesting. But instead, they put all their chips on just, okay, we've got to connect these pieces and explain this thing. And it's one of the bum notes in what's otherwise a really amazing piece of television.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on from this one particular scene to talk about the smoke monster, who we get to see for the first time, and which Rousseau describes as a security system for the island. Robert, having watched this more recently than I have and gotten through to the end, that is not at all consistent with what we find out about the smoke monster, is it?
It's not what we find out to be true. I can see that being Rousseau's understanding of it, because presumably everybody that came to the island with her did die, but they died on the island. And we've learned from the fact that the smoke monster can only take human form if you're dead when you arrive. So essentially, even though Rousseau is presumably a very emotionally shattered person, it has no way to manipulate her because it can't appear as anybody she trusts. And at any rate, she's probably way too far gone to trust anybody she sees anyhow. So I can definitely see her interaction being, it's this thing that comes at you if you try to go too far in the wrong direction. It's this thing that chases you away from places you're not supposed to be. And so that just being her understanding of it from the perspective and the interactions she's had. That's my fan theory on it, but I think it's reasonable from what we see on screen.
Mm-hmm.
It moves a lot faster than I remembered in my mind. For some reason, when it zipped on the screen, I was just thinking, I don't remember it being that fast. Mm-hmm. It just...
Yeah, as I told Katie, 2004 CGI does not hold up to 4K standards.
Sure.
Yeah. It's very, very liquidy looking in a weird way. That said, there are, later on, they get a lot better at it, and I think some of the appearances we get in Echo's episode in Season 2 and the attack on the Others camp in Season 4, I remember looking pretty amazing, but we'll see how that holds up.
This is something that encompasses all 3 of these episodes, but I feel like we get the most really touching moments of the entire show, like the entire 6 seasons in these 3 episodes here. We've spent a lot of time already talking about Jack and Sawyer's moment, talking about Christian. But we also get the Walt and Shannon scene when he gives her Boone, when he gives her Vincent to comfort her over Boone. for like a 10-year-old kid, his delivery in this scene is just great. For all the shit that we give her, Maggie Grace's reaction is great.
Yeah.
It's just a heartbreaking scene, and I love it so much. And then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It did bring tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The whole sequence of them launching the raft is just a moment of triumph that feels so earned. Just after everything these people have been through, and they've had some ups and they've had some downs, but this is a project they've been working on, and they all come together and they make it happen, and they get to watch it sail off over the horizon. And even if we all know, okay, we've got 2 hours left, things are going to go bad somehow, it's really heartwarming to just see everybody on the beach cheering and hugging, and just everybody as a community gets to share this fantastic celebration. Capped off by the moment where Vincent tries to swim after Walt.
Oh my God.
And Walt has to tell him to go back.
Yes, Vincent is and will always be the goodest boy. But we can't not talk about Jin and Sun's goodbye scene, which is also up there in the running for the most like heartbreaking scene in the entire show. So fucking good between the two of them.
I have to say, Jin and Sun, like, they were the people that got me through this whole show. Like, I just, even though, you know, he wasn't a very nice person to her for a while, like, their relationship, their love, like that, which carried all the way to the end, it just, that was my, I don't know, that was the heartbeat that I had for this show.
That's your Roman Empire?
Yeah.
I noticed it at the time, and not to get too far into what's coming up, but there is a recurring thing in the show, because we see a tragedy of separation between Jin and Sun, whether it's emotional separation, whether it's a separation of language or secrets, or just physical separation of them going off in different directions despite wanting to be together. And the physical one always seems to involve a boat. Like we see, you know, Jin go off on the raft. In season 4, we see what happens with the freighter. And then finally in season 6, there will be a final moment when they have to decide if they're going to stay together or not on a submarine. And yeah, just as a motif for just travel, like a boat is something that just takes you away into the unknown, out of the ability to see or go back to the other person once you've passed a certain point. It's a beautiful and it's a poignant piece of symbolism.
Yeah, it's either that or Jin's father, the fisherman, cursed him.
No, he's the good dad. He would not.
Yes.
Teach you not to give me grandkids.
But it doesn't change the fact that boats are a really bad thing for Jin and Sun. Well, we get a dead all along watch check-in here when Jin tells Sun, I'm in this place because I'm being punished, which she reiterates when she's talking later to Shannon.
It's interesting that in that moment, it's Claire who pushes back, who, you know, when she found out she was pregnant, she went to see a psychic. She talked about believing in astrology with Kate. She was definitely someone who believed in there being some sign or shape to the future. But by this point, she's just saying, nope, there's no fate. There's nothing. Mm-hmm. Poor Claire.
Oh, man. Poor screaming Claire. Anyway, we'll get to that. We're not there yet. We talk about all these really touching moments between people, and then we get a flashback of Shannon just being the fucking worst. It's a good thing that at this point Shannon's garnered a lot of sympathy, because if she hadn't, this scene would have been the scene where she tells the TSA on Saeed just because he asked her to watch his bag, which leads to the moment Robert talked about earlier. That gets him pulled out of line, which is witnessed by Sawyer and leads to a lot of confrontation on the island, all because Shannon decided to be a twat.
Yeah, she wanted to prove a point to Boone about something. And so she looked at the nearest security guy and was like, hey, an Arab left a bag
unattended.
I hate her.
Like I said, it's a good thing that at this point she has garnered some sympathy from the audience.
Except me.
Except you. I wrote down my thought when watching the end of the episode, watching the launch of the raft, which is so beautiful. Like Robert already said, so triumphant. And I wrote down, this is how you dash people's hopes. Because what happens in the next 2 episodes is fucking heartbreaking. Everything that went into the building and the launching of this raft is undone in a matter of hours. Showtime. Like in-universe time, it's a matter of hours. For us, it's like 90 minutes. But I think we can move on to the last 2 episodes of the season, 24 and 25, which were originally aired as a 190-minute episode, which the transition at the end of episode 24 going into 25 is so clunky. And I also feel like ABC making them make 2 episodes out of this led to a lot of unnecessary filler across both episodes.
So apparently they asked for it. I was reading some old reviews at the time, and apparently the showrunners decided they wanted to have a little more space after the raft launch, because they wanted that to be the end of the first part of the finale, but they wanted to be able to explore both what was happening on there and the journey to the hatch and the kidnapping of Claire's baby. So may still be filler, but it does seem like at that point they were like, we'd like this to have a bigger feel to it.
Okay, so I had that backwards. I thought it was ABC's fault, but I guess it was the showrunners. Episode 24 starts with another eye watch, this time from little baby Aaron, a.k.a. a little baby turnip head, who at this point in the episode does not have a name. And then we really, really start getting into the character of Arst. Dr. Leslie Arst.
The Arst hole himself.
Yes. Science teacher extraordinaire. I said gym because he goes on about like getting excluded by the gym teachers later. He gets to spend most of his screen time talking to Hurley. And Jorge Garcia's reactions are just priceless. Like throughout all 3 episodes, Jorge Garcia really gets a lot to work with, and it's so good seeing him here interacting with Daniel Roebuck.
The fact that Hurley, who is the most amiable guy on the island, who just nobody dislikes, nobody has a problem with, that he is visibly sick of listening to Arst gripe by the start of part 2 is just fantastic.
Arst also gets a lot of fat jokes in there, and not just fat jokes, but outright like fat shaming.
It's so mean.
It's so mean. It's so 2004, and I don't remember. Is that a thing throughout the rest of the seasons? And if so, like, I wonder how Jorge Garcia felt about that.
It was something that they lampshade a couple of times, which is the fact that, while the character is stranded on a remote island, Jorge Garcia is an actor who, and nobody, I think, was going to ask him, hey, could you lose 60 to 100 pounds to simulate somebody living on a deeply reduced diet, which is good. I don't think that would have been healthy, but...
No, don't go full Christian Bale.
Yeah, so I think just every now and then have somebody remark, just sort of hang the lampshade that, it's weird that you're still the same size you were when the plane crashed. Might have been better to just leave it unacknowledged because, those jokes just feel really mean-spirited today, even when they're coming from characters we're not supposed to like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of characters we're not supposed to like, I wrote down that Arst could not blow up fast enough.
Oh, God, that was so great. Just chunks of Arst everywhere.
Yes. In the middle of lecturing them on dynamite safety, gets blown up by an errant piece of dynamite after he's gone through the trouble of wrapping it up in wet cloth.
He makes Kate take her shirt off so he has something to wrap it with.
Uh-huh. And it's so great.
Oh, yeah.
There is an art to writing insufferable TV characters, because if you do too good a job, then your audience is just going to get sick of seeing them on screen and want something else to be going on. But you need them to be just insufferable enough. And they play that so well with Arst, because as you're reaching the point where it's like, okay, we've had too much of this guy, he needs to go.
He does.
Just as you're thinking, God, I wish this guy would just blow up. The best thing about Arst is that we all know a guy like that. We've all met an Arst before. And I think we've all probably wished, God, I wish this guy would blow up a time or two. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. You guys ever wished for somebody to blow up in front of you?
Oh, God, yes.
Been a few cases.
Good.
At least once a week.
That whole speech he gives about the invention of, or the discovery of nitroglycerin is apparently made up for the show. The actual guy who discovered nitro actually tried to keep it a secret for a year because he was so scared of how potentially destructive it was. And the guy eventually died at like the age of 75 of natural causes. But
Didn't blow his own face off, huh?
not in any article that I could find.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Arst, the anti-Walter White.
Oh, beautiful. These 3 episodes really, really love the use of juxtaposition, and I'm here for it because it's beautiful in every case. Starting with the opening of the last episode, number 23, we see Michael and Walt in their hotel room in Australia. I almost said Hawaii because...
I mean, technically.
Yeah.
Credit to the show, by the way, for turning Oahu into, the Iraqi desert, the Sydney, Los Angeles. They've done a pretty good job of making this a globetrotting adventure, despite almost all of it, I think, being filmed on the one island.
Yeah.
Wow.
We see them probably their relationship at the lowest as Michael is having to drag him back down the hallway at 5:30 in the morning. Jump cut to the two of them sleeping peacefully next to each other on the beach, which is just a great big moment right there.
Because if that was my kid, I'd have left him.
You could just let him run.
Yeah, I'd be like, bye. Go. You think you have it bad? Okay, go for it.
As a bystander, that's kind of a nightmare scenario for me, is to see an adult dragging a kid and the adult says, it's okay, I'm his father, and the kid says, no, he's not.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what am I supposed to do here?
I thought about that. I'm like, that's not how that would go now.
Can I politely
No.
say, please wait, I'm going to call the police. I'm sure you're telling the truth, but I'd really rather not be wrong on this.
Yeah. I don't want to see you on the news tomorrow.
Yeah.
This one's a little more on the nose, but we see Jin interacting with one of Mr. Pake's hitmen, I presume, in the Hawaiian shirt in the bathroom, who pointedly tells Jin, you will never be free. Jump cut to Jin on the boat, completely free, wind in his sails, literally and figuratively. And the one that I particularly love, that I didn't really sink into me until we were rewatching it again yesterday, Sawyer breaking something versus Sawyer fixing something. When Sawyer is talking to the police officer in Australia, the officer mentions that as he went by his desk, Sawyer kicked the desk and broke his mug. And now, throughout these 3 episodes, Sawyer goes out of his way to fix everything possible. He cuts down a mast for them to replace the one that broke accidentally. He dives out to sea to rescue the rudder and bring it back. That's great storytelling right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that he's only ever, in the first, prior to the island and in the first few episodes, he's just a taker. That's all he does, is he scavenges and he connives, and now we see him as someone who builds and contributes and shares with other people because he's come to identify really as one of them.
Well, and I think it also, speaks to the person that he could have been. If the front part of his life hadn't have gone so horribly wrong, he could have been this person all along because he has it in him.
That said, he's still Sawyer, so we get a scene where Charlie gives him a wine bottle full of messages that everybody's written for their loved ones off the island, and he immediately starts reading them as soon as they're out of view of land.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he also flat out tells Michael, if that was my kid, I'd have backhanded him.
Yeah?
But when we first started rewatching this show together, over those first 8 to 10 episodes, I was thinking, oh my God, why did I like this character so much? Was this really just a product of when this show came out? But reliving that character development again, I remember now, it's like, okay, yeah, Sawyer gets some of the best character development on the show. And it is still just great.
Especially in a time for television where anti-heroes were something that you'd see on HBO or you'd see on kind of more prestige cable dramas. Not so much as the stars of a big hit network show. So to have a character who, like you said, is introduced in the front as just being about as off-putting as you can imagine, and then be like, trust us, we're taking this guy somewhere. Real credit to why this show lasted and achieved the popularity and success that it did.
Well, as the raft is on its way to freedom, and as the islanders are on their way to the caves to escape from the others who are coming, by the way, we follow the misadventures of Jack and Locke, Hurley and Kate, and R.I.P. Arst to retrieve the dynamite. And so after Arst blows himself up, we see Jack and Locke trying to get the cleanest pieces of dynamite out of the crate and wrap them up, which leads to one of the funniest, in my opinion, lines in this season, which is where Locke asks Jack, have you ever played Operation? Jack, the spinal surgeon, have you ever played Operation? Just great. Really funny stuff there.
A great beat by Matthew Fox where he's like, did you really just... And then he just says, yeah, is his response.
I wrote it down just because it was just like chef's kiss of a joke. We cut back to more raft shenanigans. I need somebody to explain this to me. We do a Sawyer nickname check in here. He calls Walt Kazoo, and when I rewatched it, I turned on the closed captioning to make sure that that's what I heard. What's the kazoo reference here? Robert, are you Googling it right now?
Yeah, I was trying to remember, and I got nothing.
Yeah. Kara, you've been good at picking up on the references.
Yeah, this one, I literally got nothing. Like, he's not squeaky or annoyingly loud or... Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so this joke is just over all three of our heads. That makes me feel better.
Unless it has something to do with like the wind and I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone here.
No, you're not.
Robert, if you find an explanation, please stop me and let us know what it is.
I know you said that the closed captions say it's Kazoo, K-A-Z, but one theory is that it was written to be Gazoo, like the Great Gazoo, the little floating guy from the Flintstones. So G-A-Z, but that's all I got.
Wow. Okay, yeah, no, the closed captioning said kazoo. I really, really hope that's nothing like really racist that I've just been bandying about for the last like minute and a half. And the next thing I wrote down is surely losing the rudder will be the worst thing to happen to the raft.
I can't think of anything worse.
No.
What else could there be? Back in the jungle, we get the first appearance of the Hurley bird? Question mark. The weird like pterodactyl giant eagle
Vulture
thing. Which I did look ahead to find out when the actual first appearance of this thing is, and it's well into the second season. But this is just sort of a tease that there's a weird giant bird on the island.
I love the idea of between Jacob and the Man in Black, there's also this third thing that neither of them likes very much and tries not to talk about. It's Jeff. Don't worry about Jeff. He's not part of this.
Like the one dinosaur that survived is now on the island. I mean, there's been a lot of dinosaur talk. People thought that the smoke monster was going to be a dinosaur. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Hurley bird. This episode, these two episodes where we get the call back, Sun mentioning about being punished. So there's our second where they dead all along check-in. It's in these batches that we also see the smoke monster appear in all of its glory, sort of. I mean, really, we see like its tail flittering away, and then after Kate throws the dynamite down its hole,
Yeah.
does it live down there? I don't know.
It has a cave.
It has its own cave
At
that it
least one.
tries to drag John Locke into. We see it fly away very suddenly in just a big cloud of black smoke.
You know, given how big a presence the monster is in kind of conversations about this show as just being sort of one of the things that people who haven't seen the show tend to know about it, we don't really have that many appearances in the first season. Like it's, you know, in the pilot, it, tears through the trees, it kills the actual pilot of the aircraft. And then we have it show up again in Walkabout. And then between then and the finale, it doesn't show up again. Boone has a hallucination where it kills Shannon. And technically, if you count Christian Shepherd's appearances to Jack on the island. But the actual like tree tearing, clicking, roaring, stomping thing they actually do not deploy very often as a figure of the island, which is interesting to me, given how, again, you never forget that it's there. It's never right, that is a thing on the island. It's probably a good case of a little going a long way, plus also the logistics of those tree destroying scenes are probably a huge pain for the productions.
Oh yeah. We get another touching moment, like I alluded to earlier with the other episode. This time, a reconciliation, like the final reconciliation between Jin and Michael. The two characters who had a very tumultuous relationship the entire season, who somehow like learned to communicate, like overcome the language barrier while working on this boat. And the whole thing culminates in Jin giving Michael the watch that started the fight that ended with Jin getting handcuffed so many episodes ago. Really good 180 stuff here.
Yeah, I really appreciated that.
And they introduce that Sun has given him a book of phonetic pronunciations of English words, so he can at least start to communicate with people on the boat. So they can give Daniel Day-Kim a chance to speak a little more with his fellow castmates.
Sorry, I was getting some water so that I could go through what's probably, unless it's just super important in a later episode in a later season, we're going to talk about all of the numbers here for Hurley's flashback from him waking up, having overslept because his alarm clock got zapped, to making it to the airport. I only caught, together the three of us caught a lot of these, but I hadn't caught all of them. This is thanks to Lostpedia. So Hurley's hotel room number, 2342.
And that's the one that I meant to look for and forgot until he was already away from it. And I was like, crap.
Yep. This says when he gets a flat tire. I don't think he got a flat tire. Like, I think his engine died.
None of the car stops for some reason. I don't think it was a flat, but
no. But in any case, he tries driving away to get to the airport. The car fails, and his speed drops from 42 kilometers an hour to 16, then 15, then 8, and then 4. And also the temperature display on the dash is 23 degrees Celsius. So we get all 6 of the numbers right there on the dashboard.
And how warm is 23 degrees Celsius? Anybody know?
it's metric. No one knows.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No.
Can't figure that out.
The rest of the world, presumably, but who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is America, goddammit. As he's making his way through the airport, he runs past a team of soccer players whose
That was so funny.
jersey numbers are 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42.
Getting into full Looney Tunes territory with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy whose scooter he buys is wearing a Crazy Eights hat, and Hurley ends up paying $1,600 for that scooter. When he finally gets to flight 815, the gate number is 23, and then it's not mentioned in the screenshot that I took, but 23,000 is the number that the guy who sold out Kate made. That was the reward.
Which they find out because she hears him muttering the numbers to himself, and she admits that was what the number meant to her, but Hurley doesn't reveal that the numbers have any greater significance to him.
So something really interesting, in my opinion, about Hurley's flashback here is that in the case of every other character, it really seems like whether you want to attribute it to fate or attribute it to Jacob or the Man in Black, whoever, it seems like forces were at play to get the other characters on this specific flight to get them to the island. With Jack, it was Christian going to Australia to see his daughter. I don't remember how this plays out. It's much later in the show, but to see Claire. That's why he ended up in Australia drinking himself to death, which led to Jack being there, which led to Fight 815. Sawyer was there to kill a man. Kate was on the run there. Hurley had gone there to find out the source of the numbers. Michael was there because Walt was there. Everyone had a reason for being on this specific flight. There was a driving force that got them there instead of anything else. Hurley it really seems like the universe was trying to keep him off of this flight. And you can attribute this to, like he says, he's a very unlucky, he thinks he's bad luck. So of course his alarm is going to blow out. Of course his car is going to die. But if we're talking about the themes of fate versus free will, something didn't want him particularly getting on this flight. And considering what we know about how the series ends, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. That he wasn't the first choice for, I mean, assuming, because I don't think the Man in Black has much ability to influence things off the island. So if there is any greater plan, it's presumably Jacob trying to make it happen. So, or again, a force that goes past either of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for trying to get my thoughts together. For as much as, you know, everybody loves Hurley, it's like almost like they sense that he is the one that shouldn't be there. I don't, like, not like on a level that they would maybe understand, but it's really interesting, you know, that he's so different from all of the other ones, and that I think that's probably why he was not supposed to be there.
Interesting. Do we have any other thoughts before we move on?
I think that's by a considerable stretch the longest of the of all the flashback pieces we get in these few episodes. And as fun as it is, there's a part of me that kind of wishes they trimmed it a little bit, because there were apparently some other people's scenes who were filmed and then cut for time. One of which involved Claire having a conversation in an airport cafe with the captain, with the pilot. And she admits he sees that she's nervous and tries to comfort her. She tells him about she kind of spills everything to him about the pregnancy, the psychic, and all of that. And he kind of tells her a story about himself that's just boils down to ultimately, like, you know, fate can't really point you in a direction. We've all got to make our own choices, which is both a nice moment and also something that kind of plays into a theme that I think we're going to get into more as we get into this episode. So, well,
it also really plays into what she tells Shannon and Son when she says there's no fate.
Yeah, it was definitely a callback to a scene that got excised.
Yeah, that would have been nice, and it would have also been good to see Greg Grunberg again.
Oh, yeah.
I always love seeing that guy. Mm-hmm. I do feel like Claire does get a bit of the short end of the stick on this one, because they were already kind of slaughtering her into just the role of the person who's constantly shrieking about Aaron being in trouble, which, for such a likable actress as Emily Dervine, you kind of hate that they just keep putting her back in that register, and other people are the ones who actually have to go out and protect Aaron and take the active role. She just gets to scream about things.
Mm-hmm. And this episode really drove home for me why people at the time the show was airing thought that Emily DeRavin had such a piss poor Australian accent. Everyone online was just going on and on about how awful her attempt at doing an Australian accent was, even though Emily DeRavin is Australian. That is her actual accent. And watching this episode, I was like, no, I get it. Her voice is just so fucking annoying when she gets so high-pitched, which is how she spends the entirety of these last two episodes. It is just constant
screech.
Constant screech, yeah.
Which is not unfair. She's been bludgeoned by a crazy lady who kidnapped her infant son, but yeah, there's just a lot of "my baby" shrieking.
Let's talk for a second about Jack. I'm sorry, not Jack. John. There are too many J's all around, which is especially funny when they're inside the Black Rock, and Kate tries to get their attention by saying Jack, John, and I filled in Jim, James.
Well, we
Jeffrey.
know there is a James elsewhere.
Let's talk about Jack and the. Damn it! I did it again. John Locke. I should just start saying John Locke, a whole name basis, like we are with Christian Shepherd. John Locke and the Smoke Monster. This is a relationship that's not going to work out for him very well.
Well, it's going to work out great for the Smoke Monster.
Yeah. His the weird amount of trust that John has at this point, even after he gets the shit scared out of him by the Smoke Monster, he was willing to let that thing drag him down into its hole. Again, I say hole with a question mark, like that. The pit, cavern, chasm.
It's
something.
like a wormhole.
Yeah, Never really gets an explanation as far as I remember.
Burrow.
There we go. The burrow. Black smoke burrow. What are your thoughts on John Locke and trusting the smoke monster?
I just want to, like, what makes him be, like, why would you do that? Like, there's nothing that this thing has done that you're like, no, it's fine. It's really good. No.
I think Lost is a show that draws on a lot of religious and spiritual traditions, but there's a pretty heavy Judeo-Christian slant to it all. And a recurring thing in the Jewish and Christian tradition especially is the idea of someone who is set a task by God and is asked to persist and go ahead despite it seeming irrational and crazy and dangerous. Probably the most famous example being Abraham is told by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. So it's just Locke embodying kind of the classic religious figure of someone who believes he has a purpose, believes he is chosen, and any doubt or fear that he feels is just a sign of his own weakness and has to be pushed down because he needs to double down on what his higher calling is sort of the way I'm seeing it. I think him telling Jack to let go is almost him trying to atone for feeling fear. He shouldn't have felt fear before the monster because, after all, that his destiny is to connect with this thing and understand it.
No, I'm supposed to go down his smoke hole. That's what you're saying.
Burrow.
His smoke burrow, yes.
Yeah. This is overall not the best episode for John Locke not seeming like a crazy man to his fellow passengers.
Yeah, there is a great moment when he's explaining his philosophy, and we get the first mention of "You're a man of science, I'm a man of faith," where you can see the moment that Matthew Fox as Jack Shepherd realizes, "Oh, you're crazy."
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the moment in the conversation where, because I still think that Jack stopped trusting Locke and never would again after Boone died. But I think he was still prepared to be like, okay, you're useful, you're an ally, we can work out something here. When he brings up Boone in the context of Locke's journey and the sacrifice he's willing to make, and Locke replies, Boone was a sacrifice the island demanded. That's the moment where Jack goes from shifts from seeing him as an awkward ally to, okay, you're an active threat to the people of this community. Mm-hmm. And as he tells Kate later, if we get through this night, we've got a John Locke problem.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, do they ever. That gets to be the plot of the next 5 seasons. We get another were they dead all along check in here with part of Locke's speech to Jack, specifically when he says the word survival is all relative, Jack. A lot of fuel for that. They're actually all dead fodder there.
I think what's interesting about the whole fate conversation that Locke brings up there is that we already have kind of a neat little illustration of that where they're trying to decide how to transport the dynamite from Black Rock to the hatch, and they decide, okay, 2 people should carry just as much as we need, and they'll move far enough apart so that if one of them dies, we still got the other load to bring. And they draw straws to decide whether between Jack, Kate, and Locke, which 2 will carry it. And Kate and Locke come up with the quote-unquote winning straws, but we find out that Jack actually switched his pack with Kate or put the dynamite in his own pack. So you have fate saying it should be these 2 and Jack short-circuiting that and in all likelihood saving Kate's life, because when the monster does show up, Kate goes running off with that pack still on her back and does not take it off until Jack specifically tells her we need dynamite now, and she takes it off her shoulder and starts to sling it to the ground. So the first bit I'm prepared to take as a character note that Kate is someone who flees, who runs, that her instinct to get to safety would overpower the reminder that she's carrying something dangerous. Her slinging the bag off her shoulder to get the dynamite just makes her seem like an idiot. This is not a great episode for Kate overall.
No, it's not. But I love this moment with Jack here where he's the one who lied to her and embraced free will, really, because when Katie and I were watching it, she pointed out in shows and movies where this sort of thing happens, whether it's playing rock, paper, scissors or it's drawing the short straw or whatever, people always just take this as gospel. Like, oh, well, I guess that's the thing that happened. And you can choose, no, I could not do this thing just because I drew the short straw, just because I lost the rock, paper, scissors, or just because you won. Doesn't have to be that way. And sure enough, Jack is the one who went in that direction.
We also have, they're retrieving the dynamite from a ship that's been washed deep into the jungle, and what is a really cool visual when they first get there. But they go inside and they see corpses, like decayed skeletons, in chains, and Locke deduces that it must have been a slave ship. So literally they're retrieving this dynamite from a place of people who have had all agency, all choice stripped away from them. But the people who were captaining the ship, who were presumably seeing themselves as above all that, they got swept up by weather and marooned on an island. So just they're walking into a place that's at the vortex of this whole thing of, what fate can you, or what choice can you take away from others, and what will fate take away from you?
I like that.
Yeah. It's all coming to a head at the end of this episode. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about the Saeed and Charlie of it all when they go to retrieve baby Aaron from Danielle Rousseau, and where Charlie finds the Beechcraft and the Virgin Mary statues full of heroin. Immediately after, or not immediately, but not long after the flashback that shows that a groupie beat the crap out of him in his hotel room in Australia trying to get at his heroin. And
Charlie, not a good liar for someone who's apparently been a functioning addict for a long time.
Very
I don't
true.
have any drugs on me is usually one of the first things an addict learns to say convincingly.
yeah. He gets called pathetic by a woman who then proceeds to run out of a hotel room in a Poison t-shirt and no pants.
Zing.
Self-awareness. Not a lot of people have it. There's that whole thing. We see ultimately that Charlie succumbed to temptation. We don't know if he's used it by the end when he shows up, but he definitely took one of those statues, which just leaves you going, "Oh, Charlie, no."
Yeah.
The Team Locke is able to successfully get some dynamite, get to the hatch, blow it up over Hurley's protests. After he sees the numbers are on there, and he just starts screaming, "The numbers are bad, the numbers are bad." But then there's the raft. Well, like I said earlier, from the launching of the raft being so triumphant and such a beautiful moment to these last few moments here, when Saeed and Charlie do manage to rescue baby Aaron, Danielle tells them, "I heard the others saying they were coming for the boy." And naturally, like Rousseau, you think, oh, they're coming for Aaron because they came for her baby. But no, the boy is Walt. And here's a line, we've talked about this before, things that stuck with me, like the numbers, like live together, die alone. It's Mr. Friendly, played by MC Gainey, delivering the line, "The thing is, we're going to have to take the boy." Which is, for a season full of Wham lines, that is such a heavy and such a dark and such a holy shit line. And then the raft gets blown up and Sawyer gets shot, and they make off with Walt, and holy shit.
It's so great because it comes at the end of this really tense sequence where Saeed has jury-rigged a very crude radar for them, and so they see something out there and have an argument over, do they use the one flare they've got to try to signal this other craft? And there's this tension of, okay, do we fire it? Okay, we're going to fire it, and now we just wait to see what comes back. And there's this moment when the light comes on, it's another boat. Oh my gosh. But you immediately start to sense, wait a minute, they're in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Why is this clearly a man from the American South talking to them? This is a fairly small boat that, Sawyer will point out in season 2 that this is not the boat that somebody would have if they were sailing out in open ocean waters. This is a land-based craft. And yeah, just the creeping dread that builds up to that moment. But yeah, still when he makes it clear, this is what we're here for. This is why we're out here with you. Oh man, such a Wham moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just the expressions falling on everyone's face, from Michael, Walt, Jen, and Sawyer, who just seconds earlier were thinking that they have been rescued, that this operation was successful, they are so happy and joyous to, what did he just say? And what's happening? So good. Yeah, I don't know what else can really be said about that other than, oh man, what's the kid's name? The actor?
Malcolm David Kelly.
Malcolm David Kelly. Thank you for your service. Thanks for your work. We'll see you like 2 or 3 more times, but it was nice knowing you, Walt.
It's a nice culmination of Sawyer's character development that we were talking about, that he does draw his gun to try to protect Walt and just immediately gets shot for it.
Mm-hmm. And it does 2 things at once. It sets you up because we have seen Sawyer shoot a polar bear and Frank Duckett. We know he's good with a gun. We know he has no qualms about shooting someone. We've established that Jack gave him that gun specifically in case he needs it on the raft. It's established behind his back, tucked into his jeans. We know he's going to go for it. Immediately gets outclassed by one of the others who is ready and waiting for it and shoots him first.
Mm-hmm. Like they knew.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's great because you got Mr. Friendly there on the spotlight being the mouthpiece talking to them.
And there's just shadowy figures standing next to him on the boat or in the I think called the pilot house is the steering area.
Yeah, there's the person steering the boat, and then there are 2 guys just sitting there, not saying anything, not in the light, just sitting there. And then as soon as the jig is up, they are up and they are on the raft and kidnapping Walt and throwing Michael overboard.
It's one thing I miss as we go ahead and into subsequent seasons and get more of a sense of the others as humans, but just how supernatural they seemed in the beginning. Like they did not seem like they moved or behaved like human beings in these encounters, and it was so unnerving.
Yeah.
Let me ask, would y'all have swapped this sequence out for the scene with Jack and Locke looking down the hatch? Because that's ultimately our capper for the season. But I still watch this, and I'm just like, honestly, having like Michael in the burning wreckage of the boat just screaming his son's name as he sees Walt get carried away, I don't know. There's a part of me that sometimes wonders, was there a conversation in the editing room about maybe having that be the end for the season?
I wouldn't have switched them, those 2 scenes. I would have switched the musical montage that comes after this of everybody getting on the plane with this scene. Mm-hmm. Because it is really weird going from everything that could go wrong went wrong to look at all these people getting onto the plane with no idea about what's about to happen to them. With all these little character moments like John and Jack making a connection. Arst was the one that was putting Claire's bag in the storage bin. All these little things. Even Walt and Hurley had a little moment because he makes it onto he's the last one to make it on the plane on time. I would have flipped those to go from like something terrible is about to happen, but these people are all making connections, and we really get the sense that everything's going to be okay. To nothing is okay. Everything is bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's how it needed to end.
Mm-hmm. But the last note that I took for these 3 episodes was that montage, though. Like I said, I would have switched these, but the montage is great.
Yes.
It's a very emotional payoff for this whole season of television.
And there's just so many little details that they fit in there that you see. I think this is where it's finally confirmed that the comic book that Walt was reading with the polar bear was actually Hurley's, which is why it was in Spanish. Or you see Shannon looking in her bag for something, and Boone hands her an inhaler out of his bag, which was established all the way back in Confidence Man. Like, just the care that these writers took to go back and be like, what are little things we can just have these people doing as they're settling down for what they think is going to be an ordinary flight, but it's still, everybody, when they get on a plane, takes a moment to get settled, takes a moment just to kind of soothe themselves, because you never know what's going to happen when a plane takes off.
Mm-hmm. Even down to the marshal wasn't, either for the sake of the other passengers or for Kate's sake, was nice enough to let her put a coat over her hand so that no one could see that she was cuffed. Really great stuff. Really great montage. Really caps off everything that we've come to know and love about these characters. And then, like Robert said, we get the actual last scene where we see the aftermath of blowing open the hatch. And the season ends with Jack and Locke looking down into it. The camera pulls down through the opening, and we see the first couple of rungs of a ladder before it breaks off. And that's the end of season 1.
Watching that live, it was a bit of a controversial choice to be like, what? We don't get to... Knowing that, we now have a complete show and that if I wanted to, I could just go to the next episode on Hulu or Netflix. That is a very amazing image to end on. Mm-hmm. So I get why people, myself included, felt a little bit let down at the time. But man, as kind of the coda of this piece for the first season, that's great.
It really is. Now, the actual payoff, it'll be a full season before we really discuss this at length, but just based on what I remember and how it's set up and everything, the actual payoff of the hatch, we really only get a full season of it. There is so much build up. There's a scene in this last episode where Hurley and Locke are discussing. Hurley asks Locke, what do you think is in the hatch? And Locke says, hope. There's so much discussion about, okay, can we get the other survivors into the hatch for protection from the others? Saeed makes a point of, what if this is their home that we're about to break into? What if this is theirs? And I said it in another episode, what's in the hatch? It's a dude. It's Desmond. Now, granted, there's a lot more to it than that. The backstory of why the hatch is there is very important. But we only get a season of it, which after so much buildup, you'd think, all right, this is the show now. But no, it gets blown up.
My way of looking at that would be, I would say this is the literal entrance to a much bigger mythology that the survivors we've been following have still not the faintest idea about. Like, they know there's something else going on the island. They know there's some weirdness. They have no idea how much. And this is going to be their first tangible connection to the people who have been here before and what has happened ahead of them. It's the thing that caused the hatch to be built is going to be the linchpin of what they do in season 5. So yeah, while the hatch itself is not, and what it contains is not that big in the long run as, a literal entryway, it's bringing them into something much, much bigger than themselves in this plane crash.
Very well said, Robert. That's why I like having you on this podcast. You're smarter than I am.
I just like rationalizing things.
Yeah. That was the whole reason we wanted to do this podcast. That's what brought me back around from initially saying no to the two of you to saying, yes, let's do it. All right, so that wraps up season 1, and we've got 2 more episodes that we're going to do before the end of the year.
Can I add one more thing about the episode that hit me so much harder on rewatch? The show had supernatural stuff from the get-go, but more than just their being their first encounter with the monster and all that. It's also when the show kind of steps into a very a sci-fi fantasy adventure style. Like this episode is just full of images, like the way Russo just kind of melts out of the jungle when she walks onto the beach to talk to the survivors, or the image of the black rock, the ship just covered in vines in the middle of the jungle. Like, just the sense of there being magical and fantastic things at play, and just all the shots of them walking over the beach and to get there. It has a sort of, I'm just taking it back to what I was saying in the pilot, a Lord of the Rings feel of just, this is a magical land full of things that our heroes are going to have to go forward and confront. And it's really cool to see the show finally put that out on the table in a way that it's going to play with a lot more going forward.
But why didn't Jack and Locke just take one of the eagles to get off of the island?
The smoke monster is not a taxi service.
This episode is coming out on Wednesday the 13th, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, Wednesday the 13th, which means that on the 20th, we're going to be doing our season 1 recap episode. That's when that will be released. We're going to talk about the highs and lows, what we're looking forward to, like what we remembered, what we didn't. And then on the 27th, right before Thanksgiving, our last episode of Long Walk Talks Lost for the year, in which the three of us watch the Rian Johnson movie Brick and discuss that. And then we'll be going on hiatus throughout the holidays in December and come back starting season 2. Well, we'll come back and start talking about season 2 in January. When we watched these episodes together, the three of us, all three of us were like, well, you know, we really want to keep going. Do we really have to take a break? Do we need to go on hiatus for a whole month? Can't we just keep watching the episodes?
When we first talked about it, I remember we'd said, okay, we'll watch the pilot and the first 2 episodes together, and then probably after that, it's just going to be, you know, we'll each watch it on our own time and then it's become us all watching all of them together at the same time, which I'm going to say has been one of my favorite parts of this. It is just so great to rewatch this with other people.
Agreed. People who like it, you know, who love the show.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about, I meant to mention it much earlier, our themed dinner, something that we've continued doing. Robert has been so great about coming up with these themed ideas here. Because so much time is spent on the raft out at sea, we had sushi. We went to Ichiro in Rock Hill and ate some really good sushi.
Delicious.
That was Friday night. We're recording on a Sunday afternoon. Oh, did you not like yours?
Not the worst sushi I've ever had, but
Oh,
I really like the hibachi I've had there. The noodles
Yes.
and fried rice are great, but yeah, as far as sushi goes, for what I paid, it didn't feel that good.
oh man.
Sorry, Ichiro.
Well, the roll that I had Friday night was really good, and last night Katie and I decided let's do it again. So we ordered more Ichiro last night, and I had another sushi roll, which was also really good. So I'm looking forward to another 5 seasons of themed dinner nights.
Yes.
Let's talk shrimp.
I'm already thinking for season 2, what can we eat that was sealed in a can?
Tuna.
Oh, I was gonna go straight to Spam.
Ew. Okay, I've never actually eaten it, so I really shouldn't.
Makes great meatballs.
Really?
I would assume. I've never tried that.
Oh, okay.
No, I've never had a Spam meatball. I have just sliced it up and fried it, and it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't knock it till you try it.
Well, maybe we'll have to do Spam.
Yeah, Kara, have you? I don't think you've ever just been poor. Like I don't like Spam from a can is the best that we're gonna do for dinner tonight. Kind of poor.
See, for me, it would just be, I'm just going to eat rice. And I would just make plain white rice and salt and pepper and call it a day.
There's that. All right, that's gonna wrap us up. Robert, if people want to reach out to you online or follow you online, where can they do that at?
Get out and save yourselves from social media. I'm not inviting anybody else in there. It's a wasteland. Run while you can. Hug someone, love them, share a meal, watch a TV show with them. Just don't get on more social media.
Beautifully said. Kara, you feel about the same way?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
About the only social media platform that I actually enjoy being on anymore is Instagram.
They do have good memes and videos.
Yeah, they do. Like Facebook, particularly like over the last week, has been ruined for me. Reddit has been ruined for me. TikTok has been ruined for me. But Instagram remains still a good escape. And if you want to follow me online, you can do that at DB Hensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us. To see more of our original works or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on. The numbers are bad.